So good afternoon. My name is Kyung-Chan Min. I'm a professor of mathematics in Yonsei University in Seoul. It is my great honor to moderate this session, Cultivating and Embracing STEM Talents. As we all know today, science technology is one of the most important areas in every country due to the fact that its economy heavily depends on the capacity and competitiveness in science and technology. On the other hand, international collaboration is getting more important to resolve a variety of global issues such as climate change, energy, disease, and disasters. I'm sure that all the participants in this session agree that in solving such a variety of problems, education as well as science and technology should play a vital role. Also, for this reason, the STEM education is getting more important subject. However, there is a growing concern about lack of preparation of a sufficient number of students, teachers, and practitioners in the area of STEM. And also, proficiency in mathematics and science in secondary school students, along with the motivation, curiosity, and also the quality of teachers in subject matter knowledge, and the rate of STEM degree attainments in higher education. In Korea, we are also worrying about the fact that young generation tends to avoid the subjects in maths and science. As a result, the number of students pursuing his or her career in science and technology is definitely decreasing now. It seems to me that this is a dilemma faced today as an universal phenomenon. To resolve this issue in global community, there have been many interesting actions on STEM education in government level. In January 2006, United States President George Bush announced the American Competitiveness Initiative. He proposed the initiative to address shortfalls in federal government support of educational development and progress at all academic levels in STEM fields. After that, the United States National Academies developed a list of 10 actions to advance STEM education. Following these actions, the National Science Foundation has been developing numerous programs in STEM education, including some for K12 students. The government of the United Kingdom took an action in STEM education also in 2006, appointing the National STEM Director and starting to put into practice the recommendations of the STEM program report. In view of these circumstances, the presentations and discussions in this session about how to foster the curiosity of students and to help them to enjoy STEM learning is very important and meaningful. In this session, 2 speakers and 2 discussants will share the vision and strategies of STEM education in their countries. I hope we can enjoy productive dialogue with each other on possible policy measures during this session. After finishing the presentation and discussions, I would like to invite audience to participate in Q&A session for the rest of the time. Now let me introduce first speaker, Professor Alan Hankin. He is a professor of the University of Iowa. He took the PhD degree at the University of Wisconsin in medicine. His main interest in higher education, educational leadership, and policy studies. he has many Korean connection. I think he will mention about it too. So let us welcome the Professor Halkin. Okay.
First of all, I'd like to say that I very much appreciate this opportunity to participate in the Global Human Resource Forum for 2010, which once again is making distinguished contributions to the debate on how best to deal with the most pressing global issues confronting all of us. STEM disciplines are the universal languages of the global marketplace. The National Science Foundation estimates that 80% of jobs created in the next decade will require some form of math and science skills. Advanced, innovation-driven economies like the U.S. economy and the Republic of Korea economy have made substantial investments in infrastructure and efforts to establish and retain preeminence in STEM fields. National demographics, occupational migration patterns, and impending retirements among professional senior STEM faculty, mostly men, in higher education are some of the factors that combine to challenge the extent to which scientific and technological leadership can be maintained. A more inclusive, diverse academic workforce of young scholars will be responsible, in part, for the preparation of the next generation of STEM knowledge workers. Let me see. As you can see from the first slide, scientific innovation has produced an estimated 50% of economic growth in the last 50 years, while only approximately 5% of the U.S. workforce is employed in STEM fields. The implication here is that STEM workers provide a high rate of return to individual economies. Both U.S. and South Korea depend on continuous availability of STEM knowledge workers. The adequacy of supply and quality of STEM knowledge workers is key to the maintenance of quality of life. These are high-paying jobs. These people occupying these positions consume products and services, and the quality of life is maintained at high levels. Global economic and technological vulnerabilities increase where STEM workforces and infrastructures are diminished. It's difficult to regain economic benefits of preeminent status in innovation and technology-driven economies like our two countries once momentum is lost. You don't recover very quickly from diminution of the underpinnings of STEM infrastructure. Participation of underrepresented populations in some economy-driven fields directly linked to STEM, engineering, computer science, high productive, high pay fields are essential to fuel the next generation engines of growth. Absent increased investment in STEM workforce preparation, including more underrepresented populations in the Republic of Korea, we're speaking mostly of women. In the U.S., we're speaking both about women and minorities. In advanced nations are likely to continue to lose. If this is not accomplished, they're likely to continue to lose quality jobs and experience weaker demand in domestic markets for goods and services. Some of the demographic realities impacting STEM: declining birth rates, the case in Korea, impending retirements among senior professionals, mostly men in STEM fields, and the gender gap increases with levels of education in STEM fields. As the qualifications move up through the master's and PhD, the numbers of underrepresented persons moves down. So you have fewer women, fewer minorities as the qualifications move in the other direction. There's increased dependency on STEM experts from other countries. So to maintain the infrastructure and quality of life we just mentioned, it's really important that you have a replacement factor for retiring persons, and those persons often come from other countries, in-migrations they call them. Here's some interesting statistics on the implications for advanced developed economies. These are a few I selected because they provide a contrast in terms of rate of growth and likelihood of a shrinking labor force that will require in the end in terms of STEM filling key jobs and positions through the in-migration of persons from other countries. Okay, this is for the U.S. This is the women's share of the labor force. As you can see, the curve moves up completely. We're moving toward the range of about 50%, and one would expect that you would have equivalent representation in the STEM labor force, the academic labor area of women and in the United States, women and minorities. Here are the actual statistics on workers with doctorates in the most vibrant part of the science workforce, that is, where most women appear. And you could see by gender and employment, we went from about 50% of the workforce in the prior slide to about 29% of the workforce being female and participating in this workforce sector. Workers with doctorates in the computer and information sciences. It's interesting here to note that these two areas of the sciences have direct applications to high quality jobs in each of our countries. And in this slide, similar to the last one, and on the biological sciences, we see minor representation of women. 50% of the workforce. Here, 15% of full-time employees by gender in computer and information sciences. Both the U.S. and the Republic of Korea continue to invest in national policy-driven programs targeted to building a more diverse STEM human capital base. In Korea, these are some of the programs. In Korea, there's an adaptation of the advanced program that essentially is an initiative to build and strengthen institutional infrastructures to advance women in science. What you have done in Korea is adapt that program to your cultural and organizational environments, and you've done so very successfully. Both the U.S. and South Korea show notable success in increasing participation of underrepresented populations in some STEM fields. Most of the successes, as we'll see from successive slides, comes in the area of the biological sciences and in undergraduate STEM education. One of the facts that significantly relate to the participation of underrepresented persons in STEM fields is that significant increments in participation in STEM fields among underrepresented populations where institutional environments, policies, and practices significantly impact personal choices in gender-specific ways. There's no evidence that there's lack of interest among women in STEM fields. There's a book written back in the 80s that the title of which says it all. The title of the book is Getting Women Work That Isn't Women's Work. That the sciences have been viewed for many years as being, quote unquote, not women's interests, not women's fields. But in fact, that's not the case at all. There's absolutely no evidence that that is the case. Highly qualified persons from underrepresented groups, however, continue to choose non-STEM fields. And the reasons for that have been attributed to both the friendliness of work environments, the receptivity of women in science fields, and preparation for participation in science fields. You see in the next slide a spectrum of STEM-related occupations. And on the right side of the slide, you notice that very low participation, very low representation in the various subsectors of engineering, and the highest level of representation in the biological sciences. Doctorates earned by women, U.S. This is the last time it was reported. They do these reports at the National Science Foundation every 10 years. You see some increments in growth in terms of women in selected fields, mathematics, computer science, but these are over a decade. Each represents a decade. And so you can see the increments in terms of growth are relatively small, between 8, 9, 10% over 10-year periods. At that rate, all of us won't be living anymore by the time you have parity representation. This is an interesting slide here. The percentage of non-U.S. citizen doctorate recipients with definite postgraduate commitments in the United States by citizenship status for selected years. The orange bar moving up are temporary visa holders. These are persons of foreign origin that come to the U.S. and fall into the occupational category of needed occupations and remain in the United States over longer periods of time. Now, the last bar there in 2006, you see there are increments from 1986 to 2006. But another thing you might note is that with the current global recession, the likelihood of growth in that category is questionable, in that where jobs are scarce, there's always political pressures to limit the extent to which temporary visas are issued. This is more of a political situation than it is one linked to national need. Some other factors related to this slide is the situation where in the United States 40% of all science and engineering PhD holders working in the United States are foreigners. Among foreigners who earned PhDs in science and engineering in the U.S. in 2002, 62% were still in the U.S. in 2007. Among those who graduated in 1997, 60% were still in the U.S. in 2007. So they come to the United States to study, and they tend to stay in the United States rather than returning to their home countries. Among 2002 PhD graduates in physical sciences and computer sciences, two high-demand, high-pay fields. For example, 92% of Chinese graduates were in the USA after 5 years. It's 9 out of 10 stay, while only 41% of Korean graduates were still in the U.S. Why do some foreigners who come to the U.S., earn their doctorates, stay in the U.S. after they earn their doctorates and work, sometimes working on temporary work visas and sometimes getting green cards? Some of the research shows that foreign PhD graduates return home to their home countries because of career opportunities, professional advancement opportunities, quality of life concerns, and family ties, and the situation in terms of work environments that they will return to in the home countries or conditions of work. Okay, let me move on. Here are the top 5 economies of origin of non-U.S. citizens earning doctorates at U.S. colleges and universities. You notice China's first, India, and Korea. The out-migration from China and India usually is linked to the in-migration within other advanced economies, and I could not find any research on in-migration of Chinese and Indian doctoral level scientists into Korea, but I imagine it's going to be significant over the long run for various reasons. One is we already looked at the demographics and birth rates in Korea, and this would suggest that an in-migration of significant numbers of scientists is more than likely. Here's a slide on the postgraduate plans of Korean recipients of doctorates from the U.S. universities in science and engineering fields. The top line that you see there is the line that suggests that these recipients plan to remain in the United States. You see 3 out of 4 on the top line, and the bottom line of those who plan to return to Korea. Big discrepancy there, but over a 5-year period, as we mentioned previously, that number diminishes in terms of numbers that remain in the United States. It goes down to somewhere in the low to mid 40% range. Okay, I'm going to have to move along here. Full-time faculty, women in science and technology. You could see on the engineering side, as we saw at other slides, that the numbers are relatively small. The percentage of female graduates with doctoral degrees flatlined almost completely across the continuum. Percentage of female executives by institutional category shows occupational mobility, moving up the continuum in terms of administration and leadership in various public institutes in Korea. The university is doing the best in that respect, and I'll show you why in a moment. This next slide is a percentage of women executives by position at science and engineering universities, essentially flat lines across the continuum, small increments, and on the right side of the slide you see the kinds of positions of leadership that they occupy as role models at the beginning of the process. This is next slide puts into perspective a little more worldview of researchers by nation, and you could see on the left side of the slide countries, those of Scandinavia, for example, are much higher than those of Korea and Japan, attributed in part to cultural views of women's work. A more diverse faculty in the early careers are going to prepare the next generation, as we said at the beginning, of STEM knowledge workers, and the success and advancement of these early career STEM faculty depends on work environments supportive of personal and professional aspirations. This is part of the policy of the current government and Vision 2025 and the 2008 development plans of Korea. And we see on the left side mandated policies, i.e. pre-post birth leave, maternity leave, etc. On the right side, provisions of our autonomous policies. Autonomous policies mean voluntary initiatives, and on the right side, it's rather flatlined. When you mandate things, things get done. The United States has no equivalent. They mandate nothing because it won't get done anyway. So what makes a difference? What does all this mean, and why is it important, and what can you do about it? Support for faculty work-life balance, an important factor in research on over 3,000 STEM faculty members that my colleagues and I have done. Important factor. Meaningful interactions between senior faculty and early career faculty. Here the point is that junior faculty, many of whom are women, depend on support from their senior colleagues to initiate their research careers, to integrate within their professional organization, and to become socialized to their institutions. The level of discretion for structuring work. Do you have choices in how you do your work in your organization? Very important to women with other responsibilities. And the access to mentoring programs to prepare early career faculty for executive positions. It signals to those faculty members, many are women, that there are few structural constraints in the way of their moving up the occupational continuum. Okay, did a couple more, and I'll end my talk. And demonstrated organizational support for innovation and encourages risk-taking and creative function. Here the point is that trying something new, trying something different is encouraged by organizational provisions that allow people to fail, to take initiative, to take risks, to try something new, to try something different. Organizational trust, an important factor. Structures, rules, and procedures that fair treatment and that assure fair treatment and strengthening commitment. The point here is that when there's high levels of trust in organizations, high levels of trust of the organization, there's high levels of commitment. Commitment, by definition, is a surrogate variable for turnover. Where there's high levels of trust, there's often high levels of commitment and low levels of turnover. And access to media networks for collaboration and integration. And we'll slip to this. 감사합니다.
Okay, thank you, Professor Hankin. Now, let me introduce the second speaker, Dr. Barbara Oles. She is a senior advisor and acting deputy assistant director in NSF. Dr. Barbara Oles joined NSF in March 2003 as a division director for research, education, and communication. In addition, she was appointed acting division director of elementary, secondary, and informal education in 2005. She is a professor of liberal arts and international studies at the Colorado School of Mines. Okay, please welcome Dr. Barbara Oles.
Thank you very much. I would like to join my thanks to the organizers of the Global HR Forum. It's been a wonderful experience to meet so many intelligent, thoughtful, caring people who are concerned about common issues and to explore those issues with one another. So thank you so much. What I'd like to do today briefly is to talk a bit about the National Science Foundation and set the context for that organization, and then to put it in the larger context within the U.S. of some recent national studies that have been done and the recommendations that they're making for policy related to STEM education, primarily at the elementary and secondary level, but also related to careers and related to higher education. And to give, as time permits, a few examples of projects that NSF has funded related to those particular issues. So NSF is a U.S. independent government agency. We are part of the executive branch of the government. And it's really the premier federal agency that supports research and education at the frontiers of knowledge. NSF, our primary obligation is to dispense money to people who have good ideas through a competitive merit-based review process. And we've had, over the years, I think, a good success in terms of funding innovative, often transformative projects, although, of course, you can never predict whether something is going to actually work or not when you fund it. The success of, for example, the Internet is in part due to NSF funding. And the administration, the current administration's strategy for spurring innovation is certainly invested in science and engineering. NSF is in the process of finalizing a strategic plan for 2011 to 2015, and although it has not yet been released, these three areas, I think, are the focus of that upcoming strategic plan. Transforming the frontiers really emphasizes the seamless integration of research and education, as well as the close coupling of research infrastructure and discovery. And this is the area in which NSF funds fundamental, interdisciplinary, high-risk, and potentially transformative research. The second bullet, to innovate for society, points to the tight linkage between NSF programs and societal challenges. And it highlights the role that new knowledge and creativity play in economic prosperity and society's general welfare. And the third there is more an internal focus on becoming a model organization. The core strategies of NSF involve leading the way towards the future of science and engineering, integrating research and education, and building capacity to teach and learn, broadening participation, which is something Alan has been talking about, and learning by assessment and evaluation. Just to give you a sense of the scale of the budget of NSF, the Research and Related Activities Directorates at NSF, these are the primary science and engineering directorates, had an estimated budget for 2010 of $5.56 billion. The request for next year is $6.02 billion. And for the Education and Human Resources portion, about $870 million for 2010, somewhat of a rise for next year, 8.92. And we hope the trajectory continues in the same direction. It's difficult in this day and age to predict, but we're hopeful that NSF is going to continue to receive increased funding. So a little bit about the Education Directorate at NSF, which is where I am. We have several goals within that directorate. One is to build a globally competitive, diverse STEM workforce, to inspire and engage the public as science learners. So we recognize that not everyone is going to become a scientist or engineer, but we believe it's important that everyone have an engagement with and an understanding of science and engineering at some level. And that leads to then this idea of building capacity to address societal changes through science and engineering. And primarily through education research to advance the understanding and anticipate the form and value of tomorrow's learning. So we consider ourselves, just as the other directorates at NSF, biology, engineering, physical sciences, we're a research directorate as well. The research that we do and fund focuses on education. There's been a plethora in the last few months of new studies and reports about STEM education within the U.S. And some of these have the potential to be particularly influential because of the places that they come from. Certainly the administration and other organizations within the U.S. are concerned with issues of education, and particularly with STEM education. It has been a priority of the Obama administration up to this point. One of these studies was just very recently, September 15th, was released by the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. You have to have acronyms within the government, so this is called PCAST. And PCAST, this high-level council of advisors on science and technology, came to two conclusions in this study that they recently released. One, that to improve STEM education, we need to focus on preparation and inspiration. So it's not enough simply to prepare people, but we have to think about how to interest people in STEM. I won't go through all of the recommendations from this study, but among them are the challenge to recruit and train 100,000 great STEM teachers over the next decade who are able to prepare and inspire students. To use technology to drive innovation. And they're recommending that the government actually create what they're calling an Advanced Research Projects Agency for Education, somewhat like the DARPA, the Defense Agency Research Projects Group. They want to create opportunities for inspiration for students through individual and group experiences outside the classroom. They're recommending the creation of 1,000 new STEM-focused schools over the next decade at the middle school and high school level. And they're hoping to ensure strong and strategic national leadership. As I said, because this report comes from the President's Council, it's likely to receive a great deal of attention, and NSF and the U.S. Department of Education and other entities are already beginning to look at some of these recommendations and see how we might address them. Another study, recent study, is called Learning Science in Informal Environments. I've heard several people at this meeting talk about how much learning takes place outside of the formal classroom. And this is an example of a National Research Council study that looked at the whole idea of informal environments, out of classroom environments and learning. By the way, any of these studies that I'm pointing to that come from the National Research Council are available online free. So you can download them if you're interested, either that or buy the hard copy if you're interested. So they talk about the importance of developing interest in science. Are you seeing some themes here that are beginning to occur across multiple studies? Getting kids interested in science, understanding science knowledge, reflecting on science, engaging in scientific practice, and identifying with the scientific enterprise. That idea of engaging in scientific practice, what is found often in studies is that, first of all, people who teach science don't necessarily practice science, and therefore are not particularly well prepared to teach students how to practice science. And they tend instead to use sort of a formulaic approach to, this is the scientific method and these are the 5 or 6 or 7 steps you need to go through, and really not understand the process. So I think it's particularly important to look at that recommendation. Another study is actually a follow-up study of one that was done 5 years ago that was called Rising Above the Gathering Storm. And creatively, the second one is called Rising Above the Gathering Storm Revisited. The recommendation here is, first of all, a disappointment that what they recommended 5 years ago has, to a large degree, not yet happened. And they want to provide teachers in every classroom qualified to teach the subject that they teach. That would seem to be common sense. But actually, the statistics that we have find that 69% of the middle school students in the United States are taught mathematics by a teacher who has no degree or certificate in mathematics. And 93% of the physical science students in middle school are taught by a teacher who does not have a degree or certificate in physical science. So there is a tremendous shortage of well-qualified math and science teachers in the U.S. And this study emphasizes the same recommendation as the earlier study that I mentioned, the PCAST study. We need teachers who know their subject matter. And then they also recommend doubling the federal investment in research, particularly research conducted at universities. Another study, expanding underrepresented minority participation, again goes back to some of the things that Alan was talking about. But this is another National Research Council study that focuses on recommending the increase of retention of underrepresented students in undergraduate courses. Underrepresented in this case meaning women and minorities. And then better teacher preparation, better college preparation for young people, particularly underrepresented young people, and better transition to graduate study. Taking science to school, again, is another study from the National Research Council. I think you can read the basic bullets on this one. And then finally, a study that was just released by the National Science Board, so this is a different group, looking at identifying promising young people at an early age and helping to develop their abilities and nurture and celebrate innovative thinking. So they're talking about not just the students who appear to be the most gifted and talented, but recognizing the innate abilities of students who may not have had the same kind of advantages that some of the other students have, and bringing them along as well into excellence. So when you have all of these kinds of recommendations, which have a remarkably similar theme across them, what kinds of programs do we have at NSF that are addressing these kinds of issues? Well, we do have programs that focus on public engagement with science, out-of-school activities related to science, and these are on the bullets here. This example of the picture that you have there of the dolphin diving is from a television series that NSF funded called Sci Girls. So girls involved in science, an attempt to get young women middle school age or slightly younger interested in science by filming a sort of reality style television show. And in this particular episode, the girls who are in the show designed their own experiment to see whether dolphins can recognize themselves in a mirror. So that was theirs. Other examples of public engagement in science, this great backyard bird count, the mute swan in the top picture there, is a project that grew from a relatively small project maybe 10 years ago to about 70,000 checklists last year. And it's a day a year where any citizen in the country can upload to a website the birds that they can spot in their own yards. And overall, you get a real-time updated picture of 417 bird species within the U.S. and how they're distributed through the citizen science. We have a Discovery Research K12 program. This is an example of a project called Clean Energy Literacy and Leadership at the University of California, Berkeley. Another example, innovative technology experiences for students and teachers. In this case, students are from middle schools and high schools are building submersible robots from Lego and other parts and having a competition at Stevens Institute. All of these examples are ways in which young people get excited about science, and we hope then spend more time doing science. In terms of undergraduate and graduate education, we have a number of programs as well. There's the Federal Cyber Service Scholarship for Services program and an Integrative Graduate Education and Research Traineeship program, or IGERT. I'll just give you an IGERT example. In this program, it's U.S. PhD students and engineers who are working as part of interdisciplinary teams, and the focus is not just on the technology or the technological knowledge, but the professional and personal skills it takes to operate across disciplines. And finally, just a couple of things that are on the radar for the future. There's a new program being proposed for the 2011 budget on cyber learning transforming education. and that is thinking about and funding projects that will capture the sort of transformative potential of advanced learning technologies at all grade levels. And then another Horizon investment in a program called SEAS, Science, Engineering, and Education for Sustainability. And this is really something that cuts across all of the disciplines that are funded at NSF. And I think I will quit there and wait to answer questions later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Owens. Okay, let's go over to the discussion session. Let me introduce first the discussant. You're first. Okay. I have to change the sheet. Okay, let me introduce Professor Young-Kyung Ha. She is a professor in Hongik University in Department of Science, College of Engineering. She gets a PhD degree in chemistry at Stanford University. Her career, one of his career is staff researcher in Samsung Semiconductor Research Institute. One of her research interests is chemical education for students in high schools and universities. Please welcome Professor Ha.
After hearing Professor Hankins' talk, I am proud of being part of his data points in many slides. Thank you, Professor Min. It is great honor to hear the talks given by Professor Hankin and Dr. Ols. Both talks are very inspiring and make us consider developing STEM careers. Some of the issues they brought were very touching, and especially to me, maternity leave. In the presentation by Professor Hankin, the issues of declining birth rates and gender gap in STEM fields were brought up. As we all know, many policies were announced to evoke our awareness to such low birth rate in Korea and thus to lead the rates higher. In this regard, I would like to suggest that a long-term plan should be prepared to raise the birth rate higher and to keep it higher. Professor Hankin further mentioned reconciliation policies at SNE universities in Korea. For my case, I had maternity leaves and now raise children while heavily engaged in full-time job, teaching and research. Definitely, it is not an easy thing to deal with, and I'm still struggling with it. There is no clear answer to how to keep balancing in between career management and kid nurture. Sometimes I do wish to have a mentor to talk to and get some lessons. In that respect, I strongly recommend Professor Hankins' proposal of meaningful interactions between senior faculty and early career faculty. I really think that interactions and mentor-mentee relationship between senior and junior faculty will help early career faculty to move on to professional development and socializing. Professor Hankin also suggested that adequacy of supply and the quality of STEM knowledge workers are keys to the maintenance of quality of life. I totally agree with this and would like to suggest that we need to think about adequate STEM education for the next generation. In general, the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics are considered to be difficult subjects to learn. Not many students line up to credit the STEM classes unless it is mandatory. However, these fields are the main sources to upgrade life quality along with the industrial development. To continue improving life quality, we should realize that many supporting factors are originated from basic knowledge of STEM areas. And also, it is highly recommended that we need to find a way to make students integrate each STEM field for further development. An integration and crossing over concept collecting from all related STEM fields is strongly required for an invention and creation. We do feel that more demand rises on combination of interdisciplinary works in STEM today. I think that it is possible to enjoy and maintain our present industrial development. This is very important in the condition that STEM fields are well integrated together. Integrated knowledge and interdisciplinary work do easily improve quality of future life. Then my question to Professor Henkin and Dr. Olds is how we can effectively teach students integrated knowledge in STEM fields. For instance, we all know semiconductor technology requires intensive and extensive knowledge of physics, chemistry, engineering, and technology. In terms of education, what would be a good way to introduce all the knowledge to the students, let's say high school kids, who may want to involve in semiconductor industry in the future? Now, I would like to switch a gear to Dr. Oh's presentation. She talked about U.S. highest priorities and asserted needs for qualified teachers. I could not agree more. Our government also provides teacher training program and help teachers update knowledge in their fields. In our real life, our teachers in the classroom are overwhelmed with the excessive workload, covering administrative works when teaching classes. Teachers do need more time to upgrade in teaching, with more research reported engaged, with less administrative paperwork. Dr. Olds also recommended that learning is governed by prior opportunity, not just age. Yes, I also think that prior experience does give significant influence to students' learning. I strongly recommend that students, especially younger generations, have interesting STEM experience at home and in the public education system. In these days, most mothers are eager to make their kids experience science and get familiar with technology, etc. And many programs to help children to do so have been developed. What I am hoping is that students have opportunities and experiments in STEM fields organized by teachers in the public education system. It may require more devotion by teachers, but we do believe that teachers in the STEM fields are willing to provide more STEM opportunities to their students if they have time and energy. Two issues which Dr. Olds mentioned in her speech, taking science to school and inspiring the public as science learners, require significant amount of budget. However, these issues cannot be postponed to work out. Global economic and technology vulnerability increase where STEM workforces and infrastructures are diminished, as Professor Henkin pointed out. So money is the important thing to develop the STEM fields education. Once again, I would like to thank two speakers, Professor Henkin and Dr. Olds, for bringing up the actual STEM issues and infrastructure. And thank you all for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. I'll ask you later, okay, after the discussant. Okay, let me introduce the next discutant, Professor Sejong Oh, in Department of Physics and Astronomy at Seoul National University. He gets a PhD in physics at Stanford University. He has been serving in numerous important positions, such as the member of the Presidential Advisory Council, on education and science and technology, and also the president of Dean's Association of the College of Natural Sciences. Please welcome Professor O.
Thank you, Professor Min. Since Professor Ha mentioned extensively on Professor Henkin's talk, I'll concentrate on the K12 science and math education in Korea in relation to Dr. Oh's talk on science education in the United States. I'll just like to make one comment on Henkin's talk, though, that you are right that Korean academicians are really in still dark age for the case of the equal right for women, but we are improving a little bit. So I'd like to report to you that in our university, Seoul National University, studied the system of stop tenure clock for women faculty member when they have a child. So there's a joke saying that if your research doesn't go well, just have a child. And you have 2 more years of preparation. Anyway, that's quite a joke. A bit of a joke. Now, I'd like to talk about this K12 STEM education in Korea. Although President Obama mentioned repeatedly that the Korean education system is very good, I think in Korean, as a Korean, I think we have a lot of problems still. This is I'll just discuss some of the problems and maybe some measures we can improve on this. I think the good point to start is the PISA test result. PISA stands for Program for International Student Assessment, and this is conducted by OECD every 3 years, and they test the skills and knowledge of 15-year-old students in science, math, and reading. And in 2006, the primary area was on science, and they also give the survey to students what they think about science. And at that time, 57 countries participated, and Korea also participated, and about more than 5,000 students actually took the test in Korea. Now, if you look at this is the ranking of PISA 2006. The reading, Korea ranked first. In mathematics, on the fourth. But in science, if you count the numbers as mean average score, we were in the 11th. So the science, we are doing much better than United States, which actually I think it was in the 29th or 30th among 57 countries. But we are not really at the top. Like Finland, Hong Kong, and Canada, Taiwan, Japan are doing much better than us. This is the old list, but you cannot probably see. And just believe me that the United States was below the average of 29th or 30th. What is worrisome to us is that the trends of Korea's PISA ranking, that we participate in PISA from 2000 to the year 2000, and in the year 2000, the science we ranked first. In 2003, the science ranked fourth, and 2006 we were in 11th. And also, if you look at the top 5% students, the average score of top 5 students, if you take the ranking, we are in the 17th. So that means the average score of the all students is 11th, but still the top students, we are doing even worse than that. And that this is another measure that the PISA classified the students' proficiency in the level from 1 to 6, and they believe level 5 and 6 are really top students. And in mathematics, you can see that in reading, Korea, 21% of students ranked in the level 5 or 6 in the ranking, which is the first top score in reading. In mathematics, 9%. But science, only 1% of students were ranked in level 5 or 6. And if you take the ranking in economies or countries, we are in the 18th. So that means that the percentage of excellent students in science is getting lower and lower. So although the average score seems to be okay, the top level students is getting scarce, and also the average score is getting lower. Another problem we think is quite important is that the students' attitude in science. You probably cannot see that very much, but this is the index of self-efficacy in science. It's kind of like confidence, how they can do much better in science. And Korea, you cannot probably see that, but it's really at the bottom, number 3 from the bottom. Japan is lower than us by 1. So that's kind of concerning, but still, we are really near the bottom. And this is what students responded to the questionnaire. This is the student interest. The question is like, I like to read materials related to science. OECD average, about 50% students say yes, but Korea only 45%. I enjoy solving science problems. 43% of OECD average students say yes, but in Korea only 27%. And if you go further, the question on I'm good at answering questions in science class, 65% of students say yes. Only Korea, only 34% say yes, and something like so. And also, I like to have jobs related to science. Only a quarter of Korean students say yes. So, if I summarize that, the average score of Korean students in reading and math are fairly high, but they are slipping in science ranking. Also, the percentage of students showing excellent ability is even lower. And I think this is because our education system is stressing equality rather than excellence. And the more important thing is, I think, the Korean students' interest, motivation, and self-confidence in mathematics and science is even lower than OECD average. So you can, in summary, in short, you can say that Korean students seem to study math and science not because they like it, but because they are forced to. Maybe it's because the fierce competition in college entrance exam system. And that problem in science, I think, arises from this curriculum change in Korean high schools. So this graph shows you the comparison between science education in Korea 20 years ago and science education today. And the number of units are dropped quite extensively, and students taking math, science, and engineering major dropped from 70% to 30%, something like this. So this is the percentage of students taking physics, and physics 2 is very low, in physics 2 is less than 8%. And these class hours for science dropped quite dramatically in the last 10 years. And that also is reflected in SAT test. So we realized this problem. So actually, the last year, the President's Advisory Council for Education, Science, and Technology tried to do something to remedy this. And actually, Professor Min was quite a leader in that project, and I was one of the members of this committee. And so we managed to increase the science class a little bit, but also we decided to give more freedom to individual high schools on how to organize the curriculum and how to organize class hours. But it's not clear really how this change will affect science education. This will reduce the class hours for science in high school, or it could be better. We will have to wait and see. So here I give you some suggestions to improve science education in Korea. And I think we have to allow students to sufficient time to explore their curiosity on subject of their interest. So you should increase the class hours for math and science and reduce total number of subjects students have to learn. And we have to modify college entrance exam to encourage science and math among high school students. And also we have to streamline the curriculum in K12 education. And most important is that we have to cultivate creativity and bullseye view for students in science and engineering. We know that interdisciplinary education and research is quite important in the 21st century, and creativity and the wide view are quite essential for leaders of the future. So we are really lacking in this aspect. In the last session, A3, Professor Koch mentioned that he thinks Korean students learn quite a lot and memorize quite a lot, but he doesn't think that will give you creativity. And one last thing that the Korea Academy of Science and Technology also do some programs to improve K12 science education in Korea. So what is most remarkable is that there's a new program, the mentorship program for talented students in science. So this is one-to-one mentor program between members of academies and gifted students so that they can give motivation to students. I think that's all. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor. First, could you give us some comments and short on suggestion questions raised by Professor Ha and Professor Oh? First, Professor Hankin.
I think these are excellent critiques and excellent questions. I do have a response for Professor Ha's question in terms of integrating knowledge bases and both technology and the disciplines. It's really not a case that we don't know how to do it. We do know how to do it. The question is there a will to do it? And universities, by definition, are what Carl White calls loosely coupled systems. You have lots of departments kind of spread all over the university with differential interests in the university itself. So if you ask professors who they are, first they'll say, I'm a chemist, then they'll say, they'll talk about their professional colleagues, then they'll talk about their associations, and way down the line they'll talk about being parts of universities. Integrating knowledge is really a matter of people coming together and having the will to put the time and effort and energy into doing what Professor Hack suggested. Now, one of the big reasons that this doesn't happen for the most part is the way we reward academics in our colleges and universities. It's not any different in the U.S. than it is in Korea. You're rewarded for your own achievement. It's what Derek Bach and Harvard used to call every tub on its own bottom. You're rewarded for what you do, what you achieve when you go up for tenure and promotion, etc. Your achievements, what you achieved individually, is what really counts. And faculty contributions to what is necessarily a group effort is not always counted in terms of individual benefits. There are recipes that none of them work, but here's one of them anyway. Small groups that work on small projects allow individuals who contribute to those projects to gain greater recognition for their work. It's difficult for people in small groups to be what they call free riders. They sign up for the group, but they don't do anything. And so if the group succeeds, fine, they didn't contribute much, and they get the benefit of recognition for the group. If the group does not succeed, they put the least work into the group, and they lose the least as a consequence of affiliating with that group. So I don't think it's really a case of us not knowing what to do in terms of integrating knowledge bases in technology and in the scientific disciplines. I think it's the will to do it, and if colleges and universities want to move this integration down the road, I would suggest small groups of individuals working on specific problems who are recognized in the end for their contribution.
I would just add to that that I think financial incentives help. So NSF, for example, funds this IGERT program, the Integrated Graduate Research Trainee Program, where faculty must have an integrated topic for their work, and the graduate students are educated in that way, and the hope is that those students who then go on to become professors will have had that experience, and it will be easier for their generation to do interdisciplinary work. We also fund large centers, which by definition have a variety of people with a variety of technical expertise involved, and they also have both graduate and undergraduate students involved. So I think part of the philosophy there is not only to fund the research that senior faculty are doing, but to bring along junior faculty and graduate students and undergraduates and get them used to doing work in an interdisciplinary format from very early in their career.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we have a couple of minutes, I think more than 5 minutes. So let me invite some audience to raise your questions. Okay. Okay, first here, please identify yourself and make your question short and clear.
Okay, first of all, thank you for addressing the valuable lecture. My name is Hyuk-Jin Kwon, and I'm studying the mathematical sciences in KAIST. Because I am studying in the University of Science and Technology, it is hard to get a chance to approaching the liberty arts or society science, social science, like that kind of philosophy or history or economics and so on. So to be the global leader, it is important to keep the balance between their scientific major and also liberal arts aspect. So please give some advice to the students who is studying the scientific major and or some suggest the direction of that kind of stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me collect some more questions. Okay. Here? Okay.
Hello, my name is Ji-hee Moon, and my major is biochemistry. And I have some question in America and Korea, and a lot of students, if they're really interested in science, they want to be a doctor instead of be a scientist, because I don't know in America, but in Korea, after I graduate from college, it's really hard to get a job in like science field. So do you have any like other suggestions that to improve, to fix this situation or to change the system?
Okay, thank you. Let me take one more question. Okay.
Hello, I'm a student at Cheongshim International Academy. Thank you for the presentation. And I have a specific question for Professor Oh. You said in the presentation that some solutions to the Korean education is modifying the college entrance exam, but then I'm curious about how you suggest to modify the college entrance exam, because I fear that just implementing math and science courses in the school curriculum would just will deteriorate into students only solely studying for the test, not for the fun of the subject. So I just wanted to ask you the specifics of the modifications. Thank you.
Okay, first, Professor Old, could you give some comments on the last questions?
Well, in terms of the incorporating the liberal arts into science and engineering courses, I couldn't agree more that it's important to do that. And I think several of the sessions that we've had at this meeting talk about the importance of development of character and of ethics and of a broader understanding of human capacities and shortcomings. All of that is something that's strengthened by the humanities and social sciences. I think a number of institutions in the U.S., I'm sorry, I'm not as familiar with what you do in Korea, have really tried to attack that program in some creative ways. And at my home institution, for example, we have a program in public affairs for engineers, where students who are majoring in engineering also take a minor course of study in which they look at public policy issues related to their careers. They do internships in government agencies from state and local level to national level. They travel abroad to study policy in other countries. And I think they graduate well prepared for whatever career they're interested in. It's unfortunate in the U.S. that a very small percentage of Congress people, for example, are engineers and scientists. Many of us think that we might have a better government if there were more people who who had an interest in science and engineering and some knowledge in that area, and who were interested in public service. So I think that's important to do. Another thing that we see at many science and engineering schools these days is programs like Engineers Without Borders or humanitarian engineering programs where students do what we call service learning, where they work in the community and put their science and engineering skills to work to help better the communities in which they live. And that often has good ties to the humanities and social sciences as well.
These are very good and thoughtful questions, and I appreciate your asking them. In terms of how do I get a job, that's always a big one. You know, I asked myself that several times in the past, and sometimes I did get a job, and I wish I didn't get the job. But the National Institutes of Health have two funded programs for undergraduate that are applicable to your question. One's called MARC-U, the Minorities Access to Research Careers, and the other is called MBRS, Minority Biomedical Research Careers. And these two programs do in terms of advancing their students' careers and integration into fields is provide students with support to do things beyond classroom learning. To attend science fairs, to connect with other students that have common interest, to build experiential, as Professor Olds suggests, experiential learning programs. A couple of the slides, because of time restraints, that I skipped over was building an online network for integration and connection, cooperation and collaboration and communication for faculty members, especially early career faculty members. There's no reason that the same networks can't be used for accessing information on jobs, for company posting of jobs, etc. And I have a colleague who's actually developing a network model right now that for a university in science. So when that comes up, send me an email and I'll send you a sample of it. Yeah.
Okay, this time is running out now. I'd like to close this session. Well, I think our session is very much fruitful for all of us here in identifying universal challenges facing in STEM education, in gathering and exchanging insights and opinions for current issues, and in promoting global collaboration, facilitate collective efforts. I hope all the contents exchanged in our session would contribute to the theme for Global HR Forum 2010, open and ready for tomorrow. In particular, I hope Korean government and society would take more visible action with the strong will in STEM education to follow suggestions, recommendations discussed in this session. I sincerely thank to all of the presenter, all of the presentation and the discussions, especially to the Professor Olds and Professor Henkin and Professor O, Professor Ha, And also thank you all the audience who participate in this session. Thank you very much.